Chapter 169. Chapter 169. Shy Yushu Pingzhan left with Faubert after understanding the situation. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was about to head back to his room to rest when Meng Yao and Yushu came downstairs. Shield bro, what were you guys talking about? Yushu was a curious baby. She'd been eavesdropping with Meng Yao, but didn't dare get too close for Pingzhan to notice. Nothing, just some company stuff, Lin Yi said. Uncle Chu's competitor. Oh. Meng Yao wasn't interested in that. She was still too young, and hadn't been exposed to the machinations of the business world. She was still a naive person. What she cared about was the real reason her dad had sent Lin Yi over to her. She wasn't interested since it wasn't related to that. Shield bro, tell me the truth, did Uncle Chu send you over to chase Yao Yao? Yushu didn't quite believe that Pingzhan and Lin Yi were only talking about company stuff. Wah. Lin Yi looked at Yushu stunned. Oh, it's nothing. Yushu was just trying to trick Lin Yi, but the look on his face told her that her guess was a little off. At the very least, he was as clueless as Meng Yao was. Lin Yi smiled bitterly as he rubbed his nose. Yushu's question was a little too ridiculous, wasn't it? Was there something wrong with Chu Pingzhan's head? Sending him to chase his daughter? Was Meng Yao that ugly, or did she have some sort of disease that made him send someone to chase her? Yushu's imagination was really off the charts. Who knew what was going on in that little head of hers? Shu, what the hell are you talking about? Meng Yao's face reddened. Why don't you ask if my dad sent him to chase you? Why'd Uncle Chu send him to chase me? Yushu blinked. He's not that nosy, is he? Meng Yao rolled her eyes, pissed. Say another word and I'll tear your mouth apart. You can talk even if you're rotten unless you sew your mouth shut. Yao Yao, your logic isn't right. Yushu retorted. Meng Yao turned around and went upstairs. She couldn't afford to piss her off, but she could at least avoid her. Yao Yao, wait for me. Yushu turned around and ran after Meng Yao. Lin Yi looked at their backs and shook his head. Up until now, Lin Yi had never gone up to the second floor, so he didn't know what it was like upstairs. He suddenly remembered that he still had the keys to Yushu's villa. Shu. Shield bro, are you calling me? Yushu turned around and looked at Lin Yi, her mouth wide open. Uncle Chu, he didn't really send you after me, did he? Lin Yi almost fainted. I'm here to return your villa keys. Oh, the keys. Yushu was a little embarrassed. I was just joking. I know. Lin Yi nodded. When had Yushu ever told the truth? 9 out of 10 of her words were always jokes. Hee, that's good. Yushu breathed out in relief, her face a little flushed. She didn't know why she'd blurted out something like that, but it was lucky that she'd always put on a weird and crazy persona. It'd be so embarrassing if someone found out that she'd said the truth. Right, can I borrow the car for a few days? It'll be inconvenient for me to go out with you guys. Lin Yi asked. Go ahead, I'm not driving it anyway. Yushu said with a wave of her hand. I'll leave the villa keys with you. Don't you want a computer? Go get it when you're free. I'm sleepy, I'm going to bed. Bye-bye. Yushu felt that her face must be very red right now, like a crab with a fever. It was like a TV commercial from many years ago. What's wrong, bro? You got cooked? In fact, Yushu's face wasn't that obvious under the dim lights on the second floor, and Lin Yi didn't pay too much attention to it. Okay, I'll go get the computer tomorrow. Tang Yun and Xinwen walked out of the school with people pointing at them. Tang Yun was a little gloomy as she felt countless eyes staring at her from behind. Lin Yi, I'm so pissed. Tang Yun thought. Yun, I'll go back first? Xinwen and Tang Yun lived very close, but Tang Yun had to go to her mother's barbecue stall every night, so they didn't go home together. Okay, then be careful on your way back. Go visit Fin when you're free. Her emotions haven't been very stable these days. She didn't say anything when I went to her house during the weekend. Tang Yun said. Okay, I'll go visit her in a bit. Xinwen nodded. Tang Yun walked to the food street behind the school alone. Her mother was preparing to barbecue, and Tang Yun pouted as she took out the barbecue recipe Lin Yi gave her. Here, this is the recipe. Oh? You got the recipe? Mrs. Tang's face lit up as she took the recipe happily. In fact, after what Lin Yi said yesterday, Mrs. Tang wasn't sure if Lin Yi would really give her the recipe or not. After all, he might just be saying it casually. But she didn't think that Tang Yun would really bring it back today. This meant that the barbecue stall's business was going to be booming. Mrs. Tang was naturally happy. Did you thank him? Thank you. Tang Yun curled her lips. Thank him? Thank him for the love letter? Let the whole school know about it. Kid, did you thank him or not? Mrs. Tang shook her head helplessly. She knew that Tang Yun probably didn't thank Lin Yi just by looking at Tang Yun's expression. Her daughter was good at everything, but her personality was a bit arrogant and virtuous. If she'd been born in a rich family that would have been great, but in this family... Mrs. Tang sighed inwardly. Tang Yun would understand the hardships of life when she was her age. Wasn't she as arrogant as her daughter? But the bitterness of life had worn away her edge and made her into a profiteer. I already said thank you, so thank you. Tang Yun twisted her body unnaturally. Mom, let me help you. No need. Let's close the stall earlier today and try out the recipe. I'm afraid that the condiment sellers won't be able to buy the ingredients if we wait any longer, Mrs. Tang said as she packed up the stall and prepared to go home. Tang Yun helplessly helped her mother. Why did her mother trust Lin Yi so much? What if this guy just wrote a random recipe? When the time came, it would taste terrible and waste the ingredients. Chapter 170. Chapter 170. Tang Yun's family. Tang Yun went to the supermarket with her mother to buy condiments on the way home. It was just a test, so there was no need to go to the wholesale market. It wouldn't be too late to buy in bulk once the experiment was successful. Mrs. Tang excitedly started to marinate chicken wings and meat skewers according to Lin Yi's recipe. She even hummed a little tune as she looked forward to the future. If the barbecue stall's business could get better, the family's financial situation could be solved as well. Perhaps they'd be able to save enough money for her lover's surgery in the second half of the year. Even Tang Juqing, who was lying on the bed, found it strange that his wife was so happy today. Yin's mom, what's up with you today? Did something good happen? Tang Juqing lay in bed all day, bored out of his mind. He couldn't help his lover even if he wanted to, and there was nothing he could do other than sleep. Immerse's classmate gave me a barbecue recipe. If we can make it, our business will definitely be booming. Mrs. Tang said as she placed the marinated chicken wings and meat skewers into the fridge to freeze. Are you serious? That's great. Tang Juqing was happy to hear his wife's words. If it really works, then we'll have to thank that classmate. Your precious daughter is so noble and virtuous. That guy has feelings for her, but she ignored him. What a disgrace. Mrs. Tang was a little angry. If she finds someone like you in the future, let's see how she's going to survive. Mrs. Tang's words were harsh, but Juqing wasn't annoyed. He'd been lying in bed for half a year and he'd understood everything. It was because of his incompetence that he'd dragged the two of them down. If he'd had some savings, he wouldn't have ended up like this. His wife's unwillingness to leave him made Juqing feel guilty. At the same time, he hoped that his daughter wouldn't have to suffer like this in the future. This wasn't the life of a normal person. However, his wife's words worried Tang Juqing. Is he the son of a rich family? Don't be like Xiaofen's boyfriend just playing around. I don't think so, Mrs. Tang said. That kid doesn't have the aura of a spoiled brat at all. I think he'll be good to our Yin. The house wasn't big and Tang Yun could hear her parents' conversation clearly. She was a little annoyed, wondering why her mother thought so highly of Lin Yi. This guy was bad, but didn't he have the air of a playboy? Sending Pin Liang flying with one kick. Was that considered a playboy? Tang Yin couldn't even focus on her studies with Lin Yi in mind. She'd only been reading for a while before getting irritated. She stood up and walked out of her room to see that her mother had already marinated the barbecue meat and was about to try it out. Mom, can I help you? Tang Yun couldn't read anymore. She needed something to do. Then can you skewer some chicken wings for me? I'll start the fire. Mrs. Tang put the bamboo skewers aside and went to start the fire. Oh. Tang Yun went to help her mother put the skewers on. She didn't know if it tasted good, but it smelled good. After a few skewers, Mrs. Tang started the fire. Tang Yun put the chicken wings on the barbecue rack and helped her mother fan the fire. It wasn't long before the aroma hit her face. Even Tang Yun, who didn't like meat, couldn't help but salivate. It seemed that Lin Yi wasn't lying. Tang Juqing smelled the aroma as well. Yin's mom, this smells good. What? Are you hungry? Mrs. Tang hadn't tried it yet, but the aroma alone was enough to tell that it was good. If they roasted it in front of the school or at the food street, there would be a lot of customers. It'll be ready soon. You can try it first. Tang Juqing was a little embarrassed. He was lying on the bed and couldn't do anything. The mother and daughter had good food, but they gave it to him first. This made Tang Juqing feel very useless. If it wasn't for his deep relationship with his wife, Tang Juqing knew that if anything happened to him, his wife would be very sad. He wanted to commit suicide. Don't be fooled by his wife's usual complaints, saying that she had made the wrong choice back then. However, she was still busy every day for the sake of the family, taking care of the family in good order. Give this chicken wing to your dad to try. Mrs. Tang passed a grilled chicken wing to Tang Yin, asking her to give it to Tang Juqing. Tang Yun took the chicken wing and swallowed her saliva as she looked at the golden chicken wing. It smelled so good, but she couldn't bear to eat it. She ran to her father's bed and gave the chicken wing to Tang Juqing. Eat it. How could Tang Juqing not see Tang Yun's drooling face? 10 or 19 years old was the period of growth. Although Tang Juqing usually ate some meat skewers that weren't too fresh, he was afraid that Tang Yun wouldn't be able to go to school the next day. This chicken wing was obviously marinated. It was very fresh. Tang Juqing wanted to give it to his daughter. Dad, I'm not hungry. I'll get fat if I eat too much. Tang Yun shook her head. Alright, you two stop fighting. Old Tang, hurry up and eat. It's almost done. Yin and I will eat this side, Mrs. Tang said with a smile. Alright. Tang Juqing nodded after hearing his wife's words. He took a bite and gave a thumbs up. You don't say. The taste is really unique. I think it will definitely be popular. At this time the remaining chicken wings were done. Mrs. Tang gave Tang Yun a skewer and took one for herself. Although Tang Yun didn't want to admit it, she had to admit that the chicken wings this time were much better than the ones her mother made. It was no different from the time Xiaofan's boyfriend treated her, Xiaofan, and Lu Xinwen to a big restaurant. Yin, what do you think? Mrs. Tang hadn't eaten yet, but seeing that Tang Yun was enjoying it, she felt that it was a success. It's okay, Tang Yun said against her will. She didn't want Lin Yi to be too proud, even though Lin Yi wasn't here. Mrs. Tang's eyes lit up after taking a bite. You child, this is okay? Does your taste too good? I don't think it's any different from the famous barbecue restaurants. I'll roast it like this from now on. I'll go to the wholesale market tomorrow to get some seasonings. It should sell better than before. Tang Yun had to admit that the taste was more attractive to customers. Although most students didn't really care about the taste, they just wanted to fill their stomachs. It was fine as long as it was better than the school cafeteria. But it was undeniable that delicious food would always attract more students. This weekend invite Lin Yi and his classmate to our house. I'll treat them to barbecue to thank them. Mrs. Tang said happily. Of course, she didn't forget the person who dug the well. Chapter 171. Chapter 171, Threats. Lin Yi was woken up by a ringtone early in the morning. Lin Yi had experienced the benefits of sleep these past couple of days. It was a great way to replenish energy. Hello. Lin Yi picked up the phone, still in a daze. Lin Yi. A familiar voice came from the other side. It's Ling Shan. Oh, Lioness, hello. Lin Yi said, still in a daze. What the hell? Lin Yi, what did you call me? Ling Shan exploded at Lin Yi's words. I dare you to say that again. Lin Yi had thought that Ling Shan was a bit violent, so he'd subconsciously given her the nickname Lioness. He hadn't called her that when he was awake, but now that he was in a daze, he blurted out what he was thinking. But I'm dreaming, fighting a lioness. Lin Yi said, a little embarrassed as he woke up. He couldn't say that out loud even if he was thinking it. Humph. Ling Shan humphed coldly. She knew that Lin Yi was probably bullshitting, but she wasn't in the mood to argue with him. Do you have time? What for? Lin Yi asked. I'll go to your school later. Captain Yang told me to look for you. Ling Shan said. Help me solve this case. Ling Shan was at her wits' end. Searching in the forest was extremely difficult, and there were some dangerous areas that she couldn't send people in one by one. She dragged it out for a few days and there was no progress at all. She remembered Huaijuan's request and decided to give it a try. He called up Lin Yi. Truth be told, she wouldn't have called Lin Yi if it weren't for the fact that she trusted Huaijuan as a brother. In her eyes, Lin Yi was just Meng Yao's bodyguard. What could he possibly do? How? Lin Yi smiled faintly. Ling Shan had come to him after all. Alright, but you'll have to help me get a day off first. I can't just skip class all the time, can I? Skipping classes all the time? I'll use you for one day, alright? Ling Shan said, pissed. What does it have to do with me when you skip classes all the time? Yesterday I skipped class because of Brother June and today I skipped class because of you. Isn't it all your team's business? Lin Yi said. Brother Jun? Captain Yong? Ling Shan paused, not expecting Huaijun to talk to Lin Yi yesterday. Naturally, she didn't think that Lin Yi was making things up. There was no reason for Lin Yi to lie about something like this. She could verify it with a phone call. Alright, I'll talk to your dean first. Alright, wait for me at the food street next to school. There aren't many people there in the morning. Lin Yi said as he got out of bed, getting ready to get dressed. Lin Yi had planned to go to school with Meng Yao and Yushu today, since he'd been absent for the past couple of days. Jifeng wouldn't say anything about it, but he was still a student. He couldn't always get special treatment, could he? Meng Yao and Yushu hadn't really touched the food last night, and Lin Yi didn't feel like eating it. He'd just leave it for the two of them and he'd ask Ling Shan for help later. She wouldn't be too stingy, would she? In fact, even if Ling Shan hadn't come to Lin Yi would have wanted to dig out the kidnappers anyway. There was no reason for him to spoil Sihua now, since he'd already fallen out with him. He'd deal with these small fries first. He left a note for Meng Yao, telling her that he still had things to do today. Lin Yi then drove Yushu's yellow beetle out. He didn't know if Faubert had gotten his driver's license back yet, but he'd let Huaijun handle it himself. Faubert still needed to use his connections. As he drove past the slums, Lin Yi subconsciously slowed down. He saw Tang Yun standing in front of the bus stop waiting for a bus. The little rascal who harassed Tang Yun yesterday was there as well. He was waving his arms and legs excitedly, talking to Tang Yun. There were a lot of people at the bus stop, so he didn't dare to make a move. Tang Yun's face was cold as she ignored him, but she couldn't stand the little hoodlum's nonsense. She felt uncomfortable. But didn't this kid learn his lesson yesterday? His butt doesn't hurt anymore? Lin Yi turned the steering wheel and slammed on the accelerator, rushing towards the little hoodlum. The tires made a sharp screeching sound as the car made a turn. Lin Yi stopped the car just as he was about to hit the little bastard. Lin Yi was able to control a car like this with ease. The people waiting at the bus stop jumped in fright and Tang Yun, who was standing beside the hoodlum, paled. However, the one who was the most shocked was the hoodlum. He was sweating profusely as he looked at the car in front of him, not knowing what to do. After making sure that the car didn't do any damage to him, he jumped out and pointed at Lin Yi's seat. Fuck your mother. Do you know how to drive? Do you have eyes growing on you? Get out of the car. Do you want to die? The little hoodlum's arrogant nature was showing again. With that, he reached for the door on Lin Yi's side. Li Erlin thought that the car wasn't bad. It was a Volkswagen Beetle, and it should cost at least 200,000, right? He had to make the driver pay him at least 3 or 5,000. Lin Yi's car door was locked and Erlin naturally couldn't pull it open. He was about to give up when Lin Yi opened the door abruptly and pushed it outwards, causing Erlin to stumble and fall to the ground on his butt. The injury from yesterday was aggravated, and he started wailing as he clutched his butt. You haven't healed yet, have you? I thought you'd forget the pain now that it's healed. Didn't you learn your lesson from that trapeze on the bus yesterday? Lin Yi was being domineering. You were the one from yesterday. Li Erlin understood immediately after hearing Lin Yi's words. No wonder the kid suddenly drove over. It was him yesterday. You're not stupid. You're just a little dumb. Lin Yi looked at Li Erlin coldly. Stay away from Tang Yun in the future. You won't be so lucky the next time I see you. After all, the whole school knew that Tang Yun was his girlfriend. It didn't matter if it was true or not, he couldn't just ignore Tang Yun's situation. Actually, Lin Yi would still care about Tang Yun's situation even without this incident. Chapter 172. Rumors confirmed Tang Yun's face paled at Erlin's words. She lowered her head and gritted her teeth. A murderous glint flashed in Lin Yi's eyes. If it weren't for this occasion and his identity, Li Erlin would have been a corpse by now. He looked at Erlin coldly. Don't give me a reason to touch you. Take care. With that, Lin Yi grabbed Tang Yun's hand. Get in the car. Okay. Tang Yun's heart was a mess. She was panicking at Lin Yi's sudden appearance, but also feeling helpless and nervous at Erlin's words. She didn't know what to do when Lin Yi grabbed her hand like that. She didn't even think about resisting before getting pushed into the passenger seat by Lin Yi. Lin Yi got in the car and drove off after helping Tang Yun settle down. Erlin stared at Lin Yi's car as it drove off. Driving a sissy's car. What's with the act? Just you wait and see. Erlin didn't dare do anything to Lin Yi back at the bus stop. The fact that Lin Yi had thrown him out of the bus yesterday had shaken him quite a bit. At the very least he could tell that Lin Yi was quite strong and his butt was still injured. He'd be at a disadvantage if he fought with Lin Yi. But Erlin wasn't going to let it go just like that. Those words weren't just to scare Lin Yi. There was a reason behind it. Could Lin Yi protect Tang Yun all the time? Plus, it wasn't like he didn't have a backer. He'd just tell Master Bing about it and Lin Yi would be dead. Cursing his bad luck, Erlin stood up and looked at the crowd laughing at him. What the hell are you looking at? Go do whatever you're supposed to be doing. Hearing Li Erlin's words, the crowd laughed even louder. Someone even whispered, I just want to see your butt split open. Although Li Erlin was a gangster from Shantytown, he didn't dare to go against so many people. He could only walk away with a red face. The car drove for a while before Tang Yun came back to her senses. How did she get in the car? And Lin Yi was holding her hand. What the hell had she done? Her mind was in a mess at the time, so she was pushed into the car by Lin Yi. She didn't realize anything was wrong until now. Stop the car. Tang Yun raised her head and looked at Lin Yi helplessly. Her face was red. Why did she get in his car? Now if someone saw it, wouldn't the rumor become true? Indeed, the rumors had become true. Lu Xinwen was about to call out to Tang Yun when Lin Yi grabbed her hand and got on the car. Xinwen opened her mouth but nothing came out. Tang Yun was already in Lin Yi's car, disappearing from her sight. That Yun girl, how dare she lie to me? She's already in Lin Yi's car and she's still saying it's nothing. Xinwen stomped her feet. What should we do? Does she not remember Xiao Fen's lesson? She was fuming with anger when she saw Erlin limping towards her. Xinwen knew very well that Erlin liked Tang Yun. With Xinwen by Tang Yun's side, Erlin didn't dare to go overboard. What kind of person was Lu Xinwen? She was someone who could chop people with a kitchen knife. She didn't care about her own life. Erlin didn't want to mess with someone like that. Li Erlin, why are you twisting around? Are you itching for a beating? Do you want me to loosen it for you? Xinwen vented her anger on Erlin. No. When sis I fell and I can't walk properly. Erlin quickly shook his head. He couldn't afford to mess with this woman. Erlin felt that he was so unlucky. Not only did he get bullied by Lin Yi, but he also got scolded by Xinwen. He had to tell Master Bing about this and let him know how powerful he was. As for Xinwen, he wouldn't be afraid of her after he built a good relationship with Master Bing. Stop the car? You're not going to school? Lin Yi asked as he looked at Tang Yun, who was looking around anxiously. I'm going to school, but put me down. What if someone sees me? Tang Yun was panicking, but she didn't dare move. How could she open the door on a speeding car? I have something to do in the morning, so I won't be going to school. I'll drop you off at the food street later, Lin Yi smiled. Is that okay now? Why are you like this? Tang Yun wanted to refute but couldn't find a reason. She could only glare at Lin Yi. Ever since she met Lin Yi, their relationship had become complicated. Believe it or not, I just happened to pass by, Lin Yi shrugged innocently. Tang Yun didn't believe him. How could there be such a coincidence? They met yesterday and they met again today? But Tang Yun pouted. She couldn't argue with Lin Yi and felt wronged. She turned her head and looked out the window, trying not to look at Lin Yi. Yesterday, did you make up a rumor? Tang Yun looked at the scenery outside the window and suddenly remembered that she had something to ask Lin Yi. Yesterday? Lin Yi paused and looked at Tang Yun. He didn't understand. What happened yesterday? Tang Yun couldn't tell if Lin Yi really didn't know, or if he was pretending. She gritted her teeth and said, You wrote me a love letter. I wrote you a love letter? Lin Yi paused again. He remembered the rumor in school yesterday and smiled bitterly. Am I such a boring person? If I wanted to pursue you, why would I need to make up a rumor? That, although Lin Yi's words were shameless, Tang Yun didn't doubt it this time. Indeed, Lin Yi was right. If he wanted to pursue her, why would he need to make up a rumor? He had already made her mother happy and wanted her to be friends with him. Why would he make up a meaningless rumor? That would only make her angrier. Maybe someone saw it and misunderstood. Lin Yi thought to himself. My little aunt, I'm crazy to make up a rumor. There are 2 misses at home and I even lost my temper last night. Oh, Tang Yun replied pitifully. She pouted, then next time. Don't always look for me. Or else people will think that it's true. It's really a coincidence. Lin Yi was helpless. How could he explain this? Every time was a coincidence. Tang Yun ignored him and sat there quietly with her hand under her chin. The car drove to the food street behind the school. Lin Yi parked the car and opened the car's central lock. What do you want me to say? I wanted to say that my leg's healed and I'm not afraid of you anymore. You can pinch me all you want. You. Lingshan was a little pissed off. She really didn't know what Captain Yang saw in Lin Yi. Why would he recommend someone like this to her? Lin Yi's shameless words reminded her of the scene in the hospital that day. Bastard. Lin Yi said with a hateful tone. Of course, Lin Yi said faintly as he leaned back on the seat and closed his eyes. Lingshan didn't know what to say. Lin Yi's words made her speechless. Can you help me find the bank robber that day? You called me here and you're asking if I can? Lin Yi curled his lips. I really don't know how you got promoted. Other than being a tiger, why don't you have any brains? Lingshan almost drove the car into the wall. Wasn't this Lin Yi a little too mean? What did he mean by being a tiger? It was true that she was a little impulsive, rushing to the front every time there was a suspect, but that wasn't a tiger, was it? It was just a little more heroic. But Captain Yang had said that she had this shortcoming. She was the leader, and if she rushed to the front every time, wasn't that just being a hero? Actually, Lingshan didn't really think that much. It was like a war where the commander was the first to rush to the front. It was fine if the commander was a little braver, but if he was careless and got ambushed by the enemy or got injured or even died, then the whole army would be in chaos. Lingshan understood this after the incident. Fortunately, there weren't any major problems and she had time to change. In actuality, Lingshan really was thinking wrongly. Lin Yi's tiger wasn't referring to her bravery in every mission. As far as Lin Yi was concerned, if he had the ability and confidence to take out the enemy, then he would do it himself. He wouldn't let his teammates fight with him. After all, if he had the confidence, then there was no need for unnecessary sacrifices. When Lin Yi said that Lingshan was a tiger, he was actually referring to her carelessness. For example, when her leg was injured. She didn't see it, and when she knew her leg was injured, she still went to massage it. If that wasn't a tiger, then what was? Right. Then I hope that with your help, young Master Lin, we'll be able to catch those bank robbers that ran away that day. Lingshan gritted her teeth and said hatefully. If we can't catch them, then we'll deal with them later. Strike. Lin Yi nodded. I can't guarantee anything. Lingshan really wanted to kick Lin Yi out of the car. If you can't guarantee anything, then what's the point of pretending? Where are you going? Lin Yi asked. To the police station, and then we'll discuss how to catch the suspects. Lingshan explained. No need. We'll go straight to the area you guys are looking for. Lin Yi shook his head. He knew his strength the best, and discussing wasn't going to work. If those people were really in the area, he'd be able to sense them. If they weren't, then there was no point in discussing. Wah. Lingshan blinked. Just the two of us. Chapter 174. Sister-in-law and sister-in-law, why wouldn't I dare? Lingshan knew that Lin Yi was trying to goad her, but she still agreed to it. It was all because of the words Lin Yi said just now. As a former special ops instructor, Lingshan had nothing to be afraid of. Even if things didn't work out, she'd be able to escape. As for Lin Yi, since he'd asked for it, he couldn't blame anyone else. As far as Lingshan was concerned, Lin Yi wasn't a bad fighter, but he hadn't gone through professional training in life and death battles. There was still a gap between them. If Lin Yi dared to go, why wouldn't she? Let's go then. Lin Yi didn't care about Lingshan's reaction. Lingshan felt like she was playing the lute to a cow. She'd made such a bold statement, and Lin Yi had to at least give her some sort of response. Even a compliment of bravery would do, but Lin Yi didn't say anything at all. According to the surveillance footage we got from the city management as well as the traffic footage from the main roads, we can confirm that the suspect is hiding in the forest up ahead. Lingshan said, suppressing her anger. We also found the car nearby, and we found Baldi and Malalyo's corpses in an abandoned warehouse. Lingshan explained, suppressing her anger. We also found the robber's car nearby, and we found Baldi and Malalyo's bodies in an abandoned warehouse. The robbers have a lot of cash in their hands. If they leave this place with the cash, they will definitely be noticed by the nearby checkpoints. So we judge that if the kidnappers care about the money, then they must still be nearby. In other words, if they throw away the money, they might run away? Lin Yi nodded and asked. You could say that. Lingshan said. But if we can get the cash back, we'll have solved half of the case and I'll be able to answer to my side. If he's here, I can help you look for him. As for the cash, do you really expect me to find it? Do you think I'm a police dog? Linny rolled his eyes. By the way, didn't your captain call himself Hound? You can let him try. Screech. The car screeched to a halt on the side of the road and both Lingshan and Lin Yi leaned forward from the inertia. What's wrong with you? Lin Yi frowned, not understanding why Lingshan would have such a big reaction. Don't you dare insult Captain Yang. If you insult him again, please get off the car. Lingshan glared at Lin Yi, her eyes spitting fire as if she wanted to eat Lin Yi alive. She looked exactly like the lioness Lin Yi had described. So this was the reason? Lin Yi didn't know what to say. Lingshan was protecting Huaijun like this. Could it be that she liked Huaijun? You like Huaijun? Lin Yi asked. Please don't insult the pure sibling relationship between me and Captain Yang. Lingshan, on the other hand, corrected him with a serious tone. Don't use your dirty thoughts to think about my relationship with Yang Duo. I protect him because I respect and worship him. It's like a teacher. Ever since I entered the police station, he's been teaching me, encouraging me, and watching me grow. Huh? Lin Yi smiled faintly. Then would you be mad if Huaijun called you a police dog? Me. Lingshan paused, not sure why Lin Yi would ask that all of a sudden, but she shook her head. Why would I? Captain Yang's like a teacher to me, isn't it normal for him to joke around with me? Huh? Lin Yi didn't say anything else. Huaijun had been the same when he'd first joined the special ops team, and Lin Yi had been guiding him step by step. Their relationship was even deeper than Lingshan's, and that was the kind of friendship that could only be replaced by that of Huaijun. It was the kind of friendship that could only be replaced. And so, even if Lin Yi were to point at Huaijun's nose and scold him, Lin Yi would just smile at him. In fact, Lin Yi used to protect his teammates in front of outsiders, but he didn't hold back when he scolded his teammates in front of his own people. Huaijun was a big man and he'd cried in front of Lin Yi, a captain who was younger than him. Of course, Lin Yi couldn't tell Lingshan about this. Alright, since you're protecting him, I won't say that anymore. Lin Yi nodded. But you can ask Huaijun about it later, he doesn't mind me saying that about him. Lingshan blinked, not understanding what Lin Yi was talking about. Her professional sensitivity had long since made her suspect that there was some secret between Lin Yi and Captain Yang, but because it involved Huaijun, the person she respected the most, she didn't investigate too much. She believed that Huaijun was a righteous man and wouldn't associate with bad people. But now all the signs pointed to the fact that Lin Yi and Captain Yang had a lot of secrets that she didn't know about. She didn't dare ask Huaijun, but she could ask Lin Yi. She had to get something out of this guy. Lingshan thought. Maybe I'm just too excited. Lingshan said as she started the car again, her face a lot warmer than before. Lin Yi, you and Captain Yang, do you know each other? Lingshan started beating around the bush. You could say that, but it was a long time ago. I've pretty much forgotten about him. If he didn't recognize me that day, I wouldn't even remember him. Lin Yi explained calmly, but Lingshan wouldn't believe him. Forgotten? Huaijun looked happier than if he'd caught a criminal. How could it be as simple as Lin Yi made it out to be? Lingshan could tell that the captain was really excited that day. He was even talking a little incoherently. Is that so? Then how did you two meet? Lingshan asked. Didn't your boss tell you not to ask questions you shouldn't ask? I heard you were a special ops instructor before. You shouldn't be this unruly, right? Lin Yi's one sentence blocked all of Lingshan's questions. Do we have a confidentiality system? Lingshan was speechless. What kind of confidentiality was that? You're not from the police force, you're not from the military. What's there to be secretive about? Even if Captain Yang was the captain now, how did you get to know him? You couldn't have anything to do with confidentiality, could you? Don't say it if you don't want to, Lingshan said, trying to provoke him. It's not like we're on a mission. What's there to be secretive about? Yeah, I'll tell you when you become my sis-in-law or Huaijun's sister-in-law, Lin Yi said with a smile. Chapter 175. Chapter 175. Lin Yi's search method. Your sister-in-law? Who's your brother? Captain Yang's sister? Who's Captain Yang's brother? Lingshan asked, confused by Lin Yi's question. I'm Yang Huaijun, Jun bro, Lin Yi said with a smile. You call him Jun bro? Lingshan understood what Lin Yi meant right away. If he called Captain Yang Huaijun bro, then wouldn't Captain Yang be his brother? Wouldn't he be Captain Yang's brother then? Ling Shan's face went red. Do you want to die? Do you want me to kick you out of the car? Ling Shan had retired from the special ops, and no one had dared to tease her like this. Lin Yi was the first, and it wasn't the first time either. This pissed Ling Shan off. Was this guy sent by the heavens to purposely go against her? Miss Song, I'm just telling the truth. Things between me and June bro can only be told to our own people, so if you want to know you can choose one of them. If you don't want to know, then just focus on driving. Lin Yi was actually just joking, telling Ling Shan to keep her mouth shut in the future. She might say something wrong if she asked too much, and Lin Yi didn't want to continue on this topic. If you don't want to tell me, then don't. Stop finding excuses. Ling Shan humphed as she continued driving. The car was nearing the forest in front of them, and the car couldn't go any further once they reached the foot of the mountain. There was a police cordon at the foot of the mountain, and a couple of officers on duty were standing guard at the foot of the mountain. They quickly walked out when they saw Ling Shan's car. Ling Shan stopped the car at the foot of the mountain and got out with Lin Yi. Captain Song. One of the officers saluted before greeting Ling Shan. Anything? Ling Shan asked. Nope. The officer shook his head. No one went up the mountain from here and no one went down. Alright, go do your thing. I'll go up and take a look. Ling Shan didn't have much hope. Captain Song, are you going up by yourself? The policeman looked at Lin Yi in surprise. Could this be Captain Song's rumored boyfriend, the one who couldn't wait to do it in the hospital? And this young man looks not bad and he looks quite sturdy. But why is Captain Song going up the mountain with him? After all, the robbers were still on the mountain. This was not a good place to talk about love. I'll go with Lin Yi. Ling Shan pointed at Lin Yi. As expected, the officer remembered that Ling Shan's rumored boyfriend was named Lin Yi. It seemed like this guy really was Captain Song's rumored boyfriend. However, what were they doing going up the mountain at this time? Captain Song, be careful. Do you need to send a few of your brothers to follow behind? The officer wasn't reassured. Ling Shan was the vice captain, but she was still a woman. No need. Ling Shan naturally wouldn't let anyone follow her. Since Lin Yi had already said that it was only the two of them going up the mountain, wouldn't it be showing weakness if she brought someone along? The officer saw that Ling Shan was insistent, so he backed off to the side and watched as Ling Shan and Lin Yi walked up the mountain. The people in your team are quite concerned about you. Lin Yi was a little surprised. It seems like you have quite a reputation in the team. What do you think? Ling Shan rolled her eyes and glared at Lin Yi. I'm #1 in the female MMA division in the entire province. Ling Shan puffed out her chest proudly. This was an honor that she deserved to be proud of. Ha, #1 in everything else too. Lin Yi looked at Ling Shan's impressive breasts and smiled evilly. Lin Yi, do you want to die? Ling Shan noticed Lin Yi's gaze and that evil smile. How could she not know what he was getting at? You're #1 in female MMA, but that doesn't mean you can beat a man. Lin Yi shook his head. At least, I don't think you're a match for Yang Huaijuan. So what? I'm not a match for Captain Yang, but taking care of you is child's play. Ling Shan looked at Lin Yi with disdain. You can look down on me if you want, as long as you're stronger than me. Ha! Lin Yi shrugged. Let's fight when we get the chance. Alright, who's afraid of who? I'll make sure you're convinced when the time comes. Ling Shan curled her lips. Naturally, she didn't believe that Lin Yi could be that strong. Anyone could be arrogant. She went up the mountain and saw Lin Yi walking around aimlessly. Ling Shan didn't know what he was trying to do. She followed him at first, but after a while she still couldn't figure out what Lin Yi was trying to do. Lin Yi was walking around aimlessly and Ling Shan couldn't take it anymore. Lin Yi would walk here and then go back, walking the same path again and again. She didn't know what he was thinking. Was he messing with her? What are you doing? You're walking around and I don't see you looking for the robbers. What are you doing? Ling Shan stopped. I'm looking. Lin Yi frowned. Don't interrupt if you don't know anything. If you want me to look, then shut up and follow me. Otherwise, I'll go down the mountain. Alright, go look then. I'm not talking. Ling Shan was infuriated. She was just asking, and Lin Yi was scolding her for it. Fine, she'd like to see if he could find the robbers with this kind of method. When he can't find the robbers, we'll settle our old and new debts together. Didn't you want to fight? Fine, now it was. Lin Yi didn't have time to care about what Ling Shan was thinking. He was paying attention to the changes in his jade. Lin Yi didn't have absolute confidence that the jade would warn him when he got close to the robbers. After all, the enemies he'd found with the jade all had deep grudges against him, wanting nothing more than to kill him. These robbers, on the other hand, only had bad intentions towards him at the beginning. Lingshan held back her anger and followed Lin Yi around the forest, not saying much. Wherever Lin Yi went, she'd go. She'd hold back her anger for now, and when Lin Yi really couldn't find them, that would be the time to settle the score. Lingshan was even suspecting why the captain would introduce someone like this to her. Lingshan's scouting skills weren't as high as Huijuan's, but she had basic scouting knowledge and methods. She'd been a special ops instructor for a long time after all. She might only be a combat instructor, but she had some understanding of scouting techniques. Lin Yi wasn't looking for them at all. It was like he was just trying his luck. She was thinking when she saw Lin Yi walking towards the cliff. Lingshan quickly followed. What are you doing? There's a cliff there, there's no way out. Chapter 176. Caught him just like this. Hey, what are you doing? Lingshan said, panicking as she watched Lin Yi walk to the edge of the cliff. It's fine if you can't find them, but don't do anything stupid. Lingshan couldn't be blamed for thinking like that. There was no path on the other side of the cliff, and Lin Yi was going to fall off if he kept walking. Wasn't that no different from suicide? Was this guy afraid that he wouldn't be able to find Lin Yi and Lin Yi wouldn't be able to settle the score with him and end things there and then? Lingshan didn't think that Lin Yi was someone like that. There was no way he would be scared of her, no matter how fearless he was. But the truth was right in front of her and she had to be careful. Lin Yi didn't reply, walking to the edge of the cliff. One more step and he'd fall off when Lin Yi stopped, standing there. Phew. Lingshan breathed out in relief as she ran to Lin Yi's side. What are you doing? Trying to scare me? Lin Yi didn't reply, closing his eyes and standing there quietly. Hey. Lingshan raised a brow. Are you angry? You're a man, you can't be that petty, can you? Right down there. Lin Yi opened his eyes and tapped the ground with his foot, making Lingshan dizzy. Be gentler, don't fall to your death. What do you mean right down there? Lingshan blinked, not understanding what Lin Yi was talking about. The kidnappers right down there. Lin Yi said. Ugh. Lingshan's face darkened. You're not telling me that the kidnappers are down there, are you? That they fell to their deaths? Not dead. Lin Yi shook his head. The jade wouldn't react to dead people. Not dead? Lingshan paused. She'd thought that Lin Yi couldn't find them, so he'd come up with some random excuse, telling her that the robbers had jumped off the cliff and died. She didn't expect him to say that they weren't dead. Under my feet, not the cliff. Lin Yi said, stomping his foot again. There's a difference between the two. There should be a cave under this cliff. Cave? Lingshan didn't understand. Why did it sound so magical? There was a cave on this cliff? I'm guessing. Lin Yi said. You can find someone to take a look. Lin Yi could totally climb down the cliff with his bare hands, but Lin Yi didn't do that. It wasn't his job. He didn't want to do that. His mission was complete after all, and he didn't want to reveal too much. Bare-handed rock climbing was usually done by special forces, and climbing on this kind of unexplored cliff was not easy even for people who had received professional training. If he'd done it so easily, Lingshan, who was from the special ops, would naturally suspect him. Are you sure? Lingshan was in disbelief. Today's events were like the Arabian Nights. Lin Yi walked around the mountain casually before telling himself that there was a cave on the cliff, and the kidnappers were in there. No matter who it was, no one would believe it because it was simply too unimaginable. I'm sure. Lin Yi nodded. At least the jade had never made a mistake before. He could feel the message from the jade. It seemed that these people had tried to harm him before, and the jade could record it no matter how strong or weak their grudges were. Then wait for me. I'll go down and take a look. Lingshan looked down at the cliff and clapped her hands, wanting to go down. At the end of the day, she still didn't believe that the kidnappers were down there. It's best if you don't. Lin Yi wasn't looking down on Lingshan, but it was a bit difficult for her to take on 4 or 5 kidnappers alone. They have guns. All right, I'll believe you this once. Lingshan gave up on the idea of going down herself after hearing Lin Yi's words. She and Lin Yi were trying to control their anger, but it wasn't something that would risk something like this. What if the kidnappers really were down there? You should have believed me in the first place. Why didn't you trust me? Lin Yi understood Ling Shan's suspicions. This was the first time he'd miraculously found the enemy's lair. And Huijuan and the others were in disbelief as well. I'll contact the chopper and have them bring people over. Ling Shan took out her phone ready to give the order. It wasn't that she didn't use a chopper to search the area, but this was a forest and the chopper couldn't fly too low. They'd only searched around in the air and after finding nothing they gave up. She really hadn't thought about flying the helicopter into the valley, but since Lin Yi had brought it up so confidently, Ling Shan could only trust him. She'd just take it as Captain Yang's word. Can I go now? Lin Yi saw that Ling Shan was getting ready to contact the chopper, and there wasn't much he could do here anyway. No. Ling Shan rejected decisively. We'll talk about it after we catch them. I still need to go back to class. Lin Yi said. I'll send you back. Ling Shan didn't agree. All right. Lin Yi sat on the ground looking up at Ling Shan from the bottom up. So majestic, so majestic. Ling Shan didn't understand what Lin Yi was talking about at first, thinking that he was talking about the mountains and the scenery, but when she followed his gaze and saw that it landed on her body, she understood what Lin Yi was talking about. Her face reddened and she wanted to kick Lin Yi off the cliff. Where are your eyes looking at? There's a part of your body that's too protruding, blocking my view of the blue sky. Lin Yi said innocently. If you keep looking I'll gouge your eyes out and stomp on them. Ling Shan said, not giving Lin Yi a chance to look. You're threatening me, I'm going to call the police. Lin Yi didn't seem to care at all, still lying on the ground. I'm the police, tell me what you want. Ling Shan glared at Lin Yi. Then it's fine. Lin Yi said. Ling Shan was so pissed that she could only glare at him. It wasn't long before a helicopter flew over and Ling Shan's phone rang as well. She picked it up and told the person where she was, telling them to search under the cliff. Ling Shan didn't have much hope at first, but it didn't take long for her people to report that they'd caught the culprits. Not a single one was missing except for the dead Baldi and Ma Lao Lu. Ling Shan really didn't know what to say. What was going on? Did they really catch the culprits? Lin Yi wasn't just making things up, was he just lying to her? It seemed like that wasn't the case. But how did this guy find them? Chapter 177. You deserve it. Ling Shan blushed a little as she listened to the praises from her subordinates. She looked at Lin Yi, who was lying on the ground as if nothing had happened. She felt very conflicted. She told them to bring Lin Yi back to the police station, and that she'd be heading back soon. She hung up after that. She'd definitely get a lot of credit this time. She could already imagine the smile on the director's face when he saw her, but she couldn't bring herself to be happy at all. There was no other reason than that Lin Yi had found the robbers and she didn't know what to do. Hello. Ling Shan hung up and waited for a while, but Lin Yi didn't say anything. She turned around and crouched down looking at Lin Yi. We found the kidnappers. How did you do it? Weren't you following me? Lin Yi's eyes were half open as he looked at Ling Shan. What a majestic sight. Ling Shan thought to herself. She had indeed been following him, but he'd been running around aimlessly, and I had no idea how he'd found the robbers at all. Plus, what made him so sure that the robbers were at the bottom of the cliff? Observation. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't tell her about the jade. Careful observation and bold deduction. I walked around the mountain without a clue, but I didn't really have no clue. Ling Shan was starting to believe Lin Yi's words. It looked like he'd been walking around aimlessly, but it wasn't really aimless after all. Lin Yi had found the robbers. I just did what the robbers would do. Lin Yi said. The robbers would have done the same thing when they first came up the mountain, running around aimlessly. They didn't have any recon or counter-recon training, so they wouldn't have been able to look for a hiding spot carefully. They're not like you guys, they're not professionals. So, I thought about things from the robbers' point. What would I do if I were them? That's why I wandered around the mountain. I couldn't find a place to hide. Eventually, I set my eyes on the place that people would most likely overlook and would least suspect. If I were a robber, I would take the risk and send someone to explore the cliff to see if there was a cave below. If there is, then it will be very difficult to be discovered if I hide inside. With enough food, I can basically live peacefully for a while. When the limelight is over and the checks are not strict, then I can find an opportunity to escape. That's it. Ling Shan, on the other hand, felt that Lin Yi was making up some nonsense. It made sense and it explained why he was wandering around the mountain earlier. What else can I do? Lin Yi shrugged. Did I bring any high-tech equipment? Not really. Ling Shan nodded, believing Lin Yi's words. But that's a pretty bold guess. It's not bold. Since the robbers aren't as professional as you guys are, do you think they're more professional than you guys? Lin Yi asked. So, if they're not, then they're taking the risk and hiding in a dangerous place. No matter what, thank you. Ling Shan thought that Lin Yi's method of searching was way too simple, it was almost like a joke. But she couldn't say anything since he'd found them. You're welcome. I was hired by Mr. Chu. These people are trying to harm Miss Chu, so it's only natural that I cooperate with you guys to find them. No need to thank me. Lin Yi was telling the truth this time. No wonder Captain Yang would recommend you to me. Ling Shan said. But who did you learn all this from? We just have different ways of thinking. Lin Yi didn't answer the question directly. You're looking at it from a police point of view. I'm looking at it from a normal person's point of view. Then how long are you going to keep looking? Ling Shan suddenly changed the topic. Should I keep lying down for you to look at? Should I open up my collar too? Ahem. Lin Yi coughed dryly. Ling Shan had seen where he was looking and he'd been talking so much with a straight face. This made Lin Yi a little embarrassed. I'm looking at the sky, then keep looking. I'm leaving. Ling Shan stood up and turned to leave. I'm not looking anymore. Let's go. Lin Yi jumped up from the ground and patted the dust off his clothes. The police line at the foot of the mountain had been removed, but the two officers on duty were still there. They were waiting for Ling Shan to come down from her car. Captain Song, you're the best. You just walked around the mountain and you found their hideout. Evidently, the two officers had received the news that the robbers had been arrested. Ling Shan blushed. This wasn't her work at all, it was Lin Yi who'd found it. She looked at Lin Yi from the corner of her eyes, but he acted as if he hadn't heard anything, walking towards the car and getting ready to get in. Ling Shan breathed out in relief and turned to the two officers. You guys leave too. I still have something to do. I'll be back in a bit. All right, Captain Song. The two officers got into their own car. Ling Shan opened the door and got in with Lin Yi. She quickly started the car and left the place. What the two had said just now made her feel very embarrassed. Remember, this work is yours. It has nothing to do with me. Lin Yi said suddenly. Ling Shan paused and looked at Lin Yi, a little surprised. What did he mean? Drive properly. Watch the road. Lin Yi reminded. Only you know about this. Don't tell anyone else. I have a lot of things to do right now. I don't have time to deal with other things. There's a reward at the police station. Anyone who can provide information about the robbers will get 200,000. You don't want it? Ling Shan didn't understand why Lin Yi was avoiding the responsibility so cleanly. I do, but I don't want trouble. Lin Yi said. Do you really think these people are the kidnappers? That there's no one behind them? You're saying that you're afraid that the people behind them will take revenge on you? Ling Shan was starting to understand what Lin Yi was saying. Not revenge. I know who the people behind them are. Lin Yi shrugged nonchalantly. I ruined their plans. Naturally, they'll know of my existence. But that's not the trouble I'm talking about. I don't want to get involved in what happens after this. I'm only employed by Pingzhan. Do you understand? Just say that you don't want to meddle in other people's business. You don't need to talk so much nonsense. Ling Shan was pissed. So the reason Lin Yi said all this was so that she wouldn't have to bother him in the future. Chapter 178. Chapter 178, Injustice. Ling Shan's lips curled. Don't think that just because you got lucky and got the kidnappers you're good. Tricks like that weren't worth mentioning at all. It might work once in a while, but it wasn't the way to go. Of course, Ling Shan didn't know that Lin Yi was just bullshit. There was no way Lin Yi would use such a stupid method to find the kidnappers. Hui Juan wouldn't have recommended him if that was all he had, and he wouldn't have come here to join in the fun. Ling Shan, on the other hand, was just pissed off at Lin Yi's perverted eyes. He thought he was a shameless person as well. Don't worry, I won't trouble you unless it's something big, young Master Lin. Ling Shan curled her lips. He was just a bodyguard, not a real young master, and yet he was putting on airs like that. Did he really think he was that capable? That's good. Lin Yi nodded, pleased. Do you know this Li Zihua? Li Zihua. Ling Shan's eyes narrowed as if she'd thought of something. You're saying that you suspect the mastermind behind these kidnappers is Li Zihua? It's not a suspicion, it is. Lin Yi said. Is it? How do you know? Ling Shan asked, surprised. Is it Mr. Chu? No, it's Li Zihua himself. Lin Yi didn't hide anything from Ling Shan. It'd save him a lot of trouble if she could investigate Zihua and send him to jail. Li Zihua himself? He told you that? Ling Shan looked at Lin Yi oddly, finding it hard to believe. Do you have proof? He tried to get me to join his faction yesterday, Lin Yi said. He's just a representative of the interested party. That's all I know, but I rejected him. As for proof, of course I don't have it. He's very arrogant and he's not afraid of getting dragged into this at all. So it's him. Ling Shan tightened her grip on the steering wheel. I've been investigating him, but there's a lot of resistance. The person behind him has a lot of power. Even Captain Yang couldn't handle him, let alone me. Ling Shan was very angry as she spoke, but it wasn't surprising. This was the first case she'd taken on after entering the police force, and it involved Zihua and the person behind him. It was as if there was an invisible hand obstructing the investigation, and the pressure from all sides forced Ling Shan to give up on the case. This had become a thorn in Ling Shan's heart. She knew that it wouldn't be enough to get rid of Zihua, but Zihua was a cunning man and his business dealings were both black and white as well. It was almost impossible to get anything on him without evidence. Ling Shan couldn't do anything to him at all. Who's the person behind him? Lin Yi asked. Lin Yi had never cared if a person had a lot of power or background. He didn't care about that at all. Back when he'd saved Ning from a general's manor in a small country in Africa, Lin Yi had kicked the general's son in the balls, but the general's son hadn't even dared to let out a fart. He had an army, he had weapons, but it was useless against Lin Yi. Lin Yi could enter the general's manor without a care in the world, so naturally he could come a second time. He could have opinions about Lin Yi and he could take revenge, but the next time Lin Yi came, it wouldn't be his son's balls that were kicked in but his head. There were simply too many people who died in Lin Yi's hands. Drug dealers, gambling kings, underworld tycoons. The person behind Zihua wasn't much at all, and Lin Yi could make him disappear from the face of the earth without a trace. He's from the capital. You wouldn't know him even if I told you, Ling Shan said vaguely, evidently not wanting to talk about it. Oh. Lin Yi could tell that Ling Shan's emotions weren't normal. He looked at her deeply as if this was a taboo. It's better if you don't get involved in this, Ling Shan said, caring for Lin Yi. Captain Yang and I can't touch this person now, and the director can't either. If you get involved you might lose your life. Just be an obedient follower. If he doesn't mess with me I won't bother with him. Lin Yi smiled. Ling Shan rolled her eyes at Lin Yi, thinking that he was bragging. She parked the car in front of Songshan's first school and unlocked the door. I'll remember what happened today, I owe you one. I'll treat you to a meal next time. Sure. Lin Yi nodded without thinking. Ling Shan didn't know what to say. She wanted to treat Lin Yi from the bottom of her heart, but he couldn't just accept it so shamelessly, could he? He had to push it a little. Lin Yi didn't care about what Ling Shan was thinking. He got out of the car and walked into the school. In the floating cloud bar, Zihua had already smashed 4 or 5 bottles of 80-year-old red wine, and the floor was covered in red juice that looked like fresh blood. Su Jiaonong stood at the side, his head lowered as he handed over the 82 lafite that the waiter had just brought over. Zihua bro here. Motherfucker. Zihua took the wine and smashed the LCD TV in front of him with a glass stick. A crack appeared on the LCD and the red wine splashed everywhere. The 82 lafite was worth a lot, but it depended on what it was compared to. Compared to 2 golden class masters, this red wine was nothing. Those were 2 golden class masters. One was golden class early phase and the other was golden class peak. They were people who could do whatever they wanted in the city, and yet they died in a car accident. This was something that Zihua couldn't accept. Zihua would have accepted it if they'd been killed by someone else. After all, he wasn't strong enough and he couldn't blame anyone for his death. But these 2 had died unjustly. Zihua had the investigation results in his hands and he wasn't at ease at all. He'd sent a few more experts to investigate the accident, but the results were still the same. The left front tire burst and the car suddenly veered off course. Because the car was going too fast, it lost control and crashed directly into the ditch. As for how the left front tire burst, it was unknown because the tire had been burned to ashes. At present they could only make a judgment from the tire marks on the road. Sihua suspected that Lin Yi had done something to it, but he didn't have any proof. Besides, he didn't believe that Lin Yi could do anything to a speeding car. But Sihua was still going to put the blame on Lin Yi. If it weren't for the fact that they were after him, would these two golden class masters have died in a car accident? Zhao Qibing's identity on the surface was a young entrepreneur in the province. But if it wasn't for the support of the boss behind him, he wouldn't have been able to make it big from a young age. After hanging up, Sihua breathed out in relief. From the tone of the behind-the-scenes boss, at least he didn't have the intention to replace him. The severity of the investigation was far lower than he had imagined. But the fact that the behind-the-scenes boss sent his illegitimate son to his place meant that the boss was more or less dissatisfied with him. Sending Zhao Qibing over was more or less to keep an eye on him. Sihua knew very well what kind of person Zhao Qibing was. He was a typical playboy, and perhaps it was because of the fact that he was an illegitimate son that he'd been suppressing for too long. Now that it had erupted, he was even more arrogant and playboy than the boss's son. So, this could be said to be a good opportunity. As long as he did what he liked and let Zhao Qibing have a good time here, everything would be solved. With that thought, Sihua's mood improved again. When Lin Yi returned to school, it was just the 4th period after break. "Boss, you're too amazing, aren't you? Missing class every day." Kong Xiaobo turned around and said softly. "It's still a matter with the police, it's not over yet," Lin Yi said. "Oh, I see." Kong Xiaobo heard that it was still a matter with the police, so he didn't ask much. "Are you free this weekend?" Lin Yi suddenly remembered that Tang Yun said that they were going to her house for barbecue, so he asked. "Weekend?" "Yeah, what's up, boss?" Kong Xiaobo didn't have anything to do, so when he heard that Lin Yi had plans for the weekend, he was very excited. "Tang Yun's mother invited us to her house for barbecue this weekend. Do you want to go?" Lin Yi asked. "Tang Yun's mother? No way, right? Boss, you've made great progress already?" Kong Xiaobo's eyes widened as he looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. "She's here already? Can you not think so much?" Lin Yi smiled bitterly. "I just gave her a recipe and she might have succeeded in testing it. She's inviting us to her house to express her gratitude. Are you going or not?" Of course I'm going." Kong Xiaobo quickly nodded. "Then we'll contact each other this weekend." Lin Yi shook his head, seeing that Kong Xiaobo was even more enthusiastic than him. Guan Xian worked 1 day and 1 night, 24 hours and 24 hours off. Guan Xian, on the other hand, wasn't in a good mood. She'd been happily waiting for Lin Yi to come for the change, but he hadn't come even after a day and night. She'd been in a daze all the way until she got off work, and couldn't help but ask the lady in the same department if Lin Yi had been coming for the change these past few days. The lady had an impression that Lin Yi's last change was a few days ago, and he hadn't come after that. Guan Xian was a bit disappointed after hearing the lady's words. She didn't know why, but she was looking forward to seeing Lin Yi. She was looking forward to coming to work when she was resting at home. This was something that had never happened before. Was it because Lin Yi took the bullet for her? Or was it something else? Guan Xian didn't know, but she felt empty when she didn't see Lin Yi. She was worried about his wounded. Gunshot wounds weren't that easy to heal. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have recovered, but why didn't he come to change his bandages? Was he purposely avoiding her? Women's thoughts were always complicated, and Guan Xian's thoughts started to run wild. She started to worry about her gains and losses. When she got home, she saw her grandpa happily plowing the yard, looking like he was planning to plant something. The layout of Yushu's villa was basically the same as Mengyao's, and even the decorations were similar. They must have done it together. Lin Yi sweated as he looked at the panties strewn all over the living room and the sofa. He didn't want Yushu to think he was some kind of pervert. Yushu wasn't here, so she wouldn't know about it. He went upstairs, and this was Lin Yi's first time seeing the upstairs of the villa. Mengyao's place should be pretty much the same. There were 4 rooms upstairs, and Lin Yi found the study and moved the computer downstairs. He locked the door and left the villa. Lin Yi didn't touch anything else in the villa. Miss Chen wasn't that easy to mess with, and he'd have another handle on him if he touched anything of hers. Mengyao and Yushu were watching TV in the living room when Lin Yi got back to the villa. For the first time ever, the two of them were watching TV in the living room. Usually they'd go upstairs when they got home. Mengyao and Yushu glanced at Lin Yi when he came back with a computer before turning their eyes back to the TV screen. Lin Yi glanced at the TV screen. It was a celebrities concert, and a pretty girl was jumping up and down on the stage. It was just that she was wearing a little too much clothes. Lin Yi thought that it'd be great if she wore a little less. Hey, do you want to watch the concert with us? The superstar Su Shirhan is there too. Yushu's eyes didn't leave the screen. I'll pass. You guys go ahead. Lin Yi wasn't very interested in celebrity concerts like this. There was just too much negative news in the showbiz. And it made Lin Yi think that the girl on the TV was just pretending to be innocent, tricking young girls like Mengyao and Yushu. Mengyao and Yushu didn't show too much displeasure when Lin Yi didn't watch the concert. The girl was their idol after all, and it didn't matter to them whether Lin Yi liked her or not. Lin Yi carried the computer back to his room, only to find that the network card's light wasn't on after connecting it. The cable on the wall was working, and the only possibility was that the cable wasn't connected to this room. Lin Yi walked out of the room again. Yao, where's the cable to the house? There's no signal in my room. It's upstairs, go do it yourself. Don't bother me watching the concert. Mengyao said impatiently with a wave of her hand. Lin Yi's room hadn't been occupied before, so it was only natural that the cable wasn't connected properly. Me? Go upstairs? Lin Yi blinked. Wasn't he not allowed to go upstairs? Was he supposed to let him go today? Although both of them were downstairs, it was still their own little world upstairs, right? You can't go to Mai and Shu's room. The data box is in the middle of the staircase. General Wei Wu, follow him, bite him if he goes anywhere else. Mengyao was clearly obsessed with the concert and she didn't even care if Lin Yi went upstairs. But she wasn't stupid enough to send General Wei Wu to follow him. But would that work? General Wei Wu let out a low growl, wagging its tail unwillingly beside Mengyao's feet. What? You want to watch the concert too? Mengyao thought that General Wei Wu was reluctant to leave. Perverted dog. Woof. General Wei Wu growled again and ran towards Lin Yi. However, it didn't dare get too close to Lin Yi, following behind Lin Yi meekly. Lin Yi was excited and nervous at the same time. He'd gone to Yushu's house earlier and he'd gone to the second floor, but it had been a long time since anyone had lived there. Yushu had moved in for a while now, and there was nothing to be excited about in an empty room. Chapter 181. Chapter 181. Secrets in the computer. But since Mengyao had said that the data box was between the first and second floors, there was no way Lin Yi was going upstairs. General Wei Wu couldn't stop him and wouldn't stop him, but Lin Yi wasn't the type of person who liked to peep at people. Even if he were to go upstairs, he'd do it openly. What was the point of sneaking around like this? Lin Yi walked up the stairs quickly and found a hidden data box on the wall between the first and second floors. It was wallpapered and he wouldn't be able to tell if he didn't look closely. Lin Yi opened the data box. He didn't know much about the network, but the labels on the data box were clear. Evidently, the people living in the villa area were all rich people and not many of them knew about the wiring. The developers had taken this into consideration when they built the house, and the switches in each room were clearly labeled. All they had to do was follow the instructions on the labels and everything would be fine. As expected, the data box in his room didn't have a phone or internet connection. Lin Yi turned on the internet but didn't need a phone. He had a phone after all and didn't need a phone. With that done, Lin Yi closed the data box and went downstairs. Mengyao only glanced at him, noticing that he'd come down so quickly, and that General Wei Wu didn't react at all. She decided that Lin Yi probably hadn't gone up to the second floor, and so she turned her attention back to the TV. Yushu and Su Shirhan were dancing excitedly. Lin Yi wasn't interested at all. He went back to his room and started looking at Yushu's computer. It was a branded computer with nice specs and looks, but it was a little feminine. The case and monitor were very bright and colorful, and even the mouse and keyboard were very stylish. Girls like stuff like that. But Lin Yi wasn't picky about stuff like that, he'd just have to make do with it. He plugged in the computer and turned it on, entering the system in no time at all. Yushu's desktop was very clean with almost no software. There were only QQ and Feishine, a video player, and a few other common software. There weren't any professional ones at all. Lin Yi opened the D drive of the computer. There were 2 folders inside. One was a video and the other was a photo album. Lin Yi got a little excited when he saw the folder name. It couldn't be Yushu, could it? He turned his head to look at the locked door before opening the videos folder with shaky hands. As for Yushu, Lin Yi had always had a good impression of her. She was the type of girl that people liked easily. She looked like a brainless, carefree girl, but she was actually very shrewd. In contrast to Mingyao's arrogance, Yushu was much more approachable and approachable. She was basically the bridge between him and the miss, and it was only natural that Lin Yi had a good impression of her. These pictures were proof of their growth and friendship, and it was very precious. Most of the pictures were of the two going out and having fun, and the two would go on a trip every winter and summer break. Lin Yi just didn't know who was taking the pictures. It couldn't be Faubert, could it? Lin Yi couldn't help but think of Faubert huffing and puffing behind the two girls with a camera on his back. Well, it seemed like a part of Faubert's work had been transferred to him already. Was he the Mrs. Follower now? Lin Yi stopped smiling at the thought. Next time he'd probably be the one carrying the camera around, wouldn't he? Chapter 182. A warning to the head. Lin Yi didn't have anything else to do at the moment, so he opened up the internet and searched for the named Xihua. Most of the news was positive, and only a few small forums had some comments about how Xihua was a local boss, saying that he could do whatever he wanted. None of that was of any use to Lin Yi. Lin Yi closed the web page and turned to search for information about Dr. Kong. Since Lin Yi was planning to show off his skills in the medical industry, it was a necessity for him to know about this Dr. Kong. What Lin Yi didn't expect was that the man was Kong Xiaobo's grandfather. It was a bit of a coincidence. A man couldn't live without money. His old man was very strict with him, but Lin Yi had never complained about it. A mission was worth a few hundred kuai. It wasn't even as much as the funds for the mission. His Shifu wasn't a stingy man, and the rest of the money would be transferred to his old man's account, other than the portion that the organization had to keep. But the old man only gave him a few hundred kuai. Lin Yi couldn't be bothered to argue about it. The only possibility was that the old man had taken the money for himself. But to Lin Yi, the old man was like a father to him, the one who'd raised him from a young age. If the old man was greedy, then so be it. Lin Yi could only pretend that he didn't know anything about it, since he didn't have to worry about food and clothing. What Lin Yi didn't understand, however, was why the old man was still so poor after taking the money. Was he a modern-day granddad? He was getting Pingzhan's salary every month, but Lin Yi didn't have a source of income of his own. Who knew what was going on with this mission? Lin Yi still couldn't figure it out. He had to leave a backup plan. What if he lost his job? Lin Yi had truly fallen in love with his current life. He went to school like any other high schooler. He had his friends and the girl he had a crush on. From the reviews on the internet, Dr. Kang's reputation was pretty good. It was just that the medicine was either too popular or too hard to get a hold of, resulting in a situation where there wasn't a market for it. But that only served to prove how amazing the medicine was. Lin Yi hadn't seen what Dr. Kang's golden creation looked like, but Lin Yi was confident that his old man's prescription wouldn't be much worse than Dr. Kang's. The market would probably be split in two if he were to bring it out. Lin Yi didn't have anything to do the next day, so he naturally wouldn't drive to school by himself. Mengyao and Yushu were yawning as they walked downstairs, evidently having stayed up late last night to watch the concert. Lin Yi didn't think much of the star's attractiveness at all. She was a bit prettier than Mengyao and Yushu, but that was only because of the makeup and the stage effects. Mengyao and Yushu were on par with the star in terms of quality, and Lin Yi felt that he'd rather watch his two girls than the star. That concert yesterday was so good. I wonder when Lil Han's coming to Songshan for her concert? Yushu was still thinking about the show last night. Man, Songshan's not a provincial city, and it's not a special economic zone either. It'll probably be a little difficult. Mengyao said. We have to get a Blu-ray of the concert. We didn't get enough of it yesterday. Yeah, we'll go buy it at noon. See if there's a music store near the school. Yushu nodded. But there don't seem to be any legal ones near the school. We'll have to go to the bookstore if we want to buy the original one. Lin Yi. Mengyao called out to the idling Lin Yi. Go get us a Blu-ray of Su Shirhan's 2011 concert if you're free this afternoon. The first one was a month ago. I'm sure they'll be selling it by now. Lin Yi nodded as he watched the two star chasers chatting away. It was a small matter. Lin Yi didn't think much of it. Ah, you're so smart, Yao Yao. With Shield Bro running errands, we don't have to walk that far anymore. Yushu had been grumbling about how far it was to walk to the bookstore, about a kilometer, and she didn't want to trouble Faubert to come over at noon. Meng Yao handing the task to Lin Yi straight away made her very happy. I didn't hire him to hit on girls, I hired him to do things. Meng Yao curled her lips as she glared at Lin Yi. Ugh. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. It wasn't her business if he hit on girls, was it? It was fine as long as he didn't hit on the miss. Even a follower needed love. Lin Yi looked out of the window when Faubert's car arrived at the slums. Lin Yi let out a breath of relief when he saw that Tang Yun was safe and sound, waiting at the bus stop. It seemed like that little gangster wasn't bothering Tang Yun today. Zhou Ruoming was furious. Yes, he was furious to the extreme. Lin Yi and Tang Yun were walking together? Naturally, Zhou Ruoming heard about Lin Yi and Tang Yun's confession and Tang Yun's shyness. The school was only that big, how could the Big Four not know about it? Originally, Zhou Ruoming had a good plan. He would force Tang Yun to abdicate at her mother's place, and then create a false impression that Tang Yun was Zhou Ruoming's girlfriend. He would let the whole school know about this and Tang Yun would have no choice but to accept him. But the plan changed quickly. Zhou Ruoming didn't think that Lin Yi would come out of nowhere and ruin his plan. He even got slapped in the face and became a laughing stock. This made Zhou Ruoming lose face, and at the same time he hated Lin Yi. He planned to let his big brother Zhou Ruoguang teach Lin Yi a lesson. But because of what happened with Heibao Bro, Zhou Ruoming didn't dare to let his big brother teach someone a lesson in the school. He could only wait for a suitable opportunity or wait for the storm to blow over. One had to know that Heibao Bro was in the police station and was going to be sentenced. Although Pinliang's father suppressed the matter and didn't implicate Pinliang, Pinliang's father Zhong Fabai wasn't able to get Heibao Bro out of jail. This was proof of how big the matter was. In fact, Songshan First High wasn't a normal high school, but a private school with a strong background. Zhou Ruoming could imagine that if Zhong Pingliang's uncle wasn't one of the directors of the school, he would have been expelled a long time ago. As a result, Ruoming had no choice but to bear with it for the time being. But that opportunity didn't come. The rumors that had been spreading around the school yesterday were like a hammer to his head. Ruoming was dumbfounded. Pinliang patted one of the lackeys beside Zhou Ruoming, and the lackey quickly moved aside, letting Pinliang sit beside Zhou Ruoming. Liangzi, I've been slapped in the face this time. Zhou Ruoming sighed and said hatefully, everyone in the school knows that I'm chasing after Tang Yun, but that bastard Lin Yi beat me to it. I can't take this lying down. Ming bro, I think that you're too conservative in this matter. Pinliang said with a pained expression. Tang Yun's family background isn't that big of a deal. There's a saying, the one who strikes first gains the advantage. Ming bro, if you force her, wouldn't Tang Yun be yours now? Right now, even if I want to force myself on you, I don't dare to. You know that Ming Yao's family is even more powerful than mine. Ah, you're right, Liangzi. Don't even mention how much I regret it now. Zhou Ruoming's face darkened. If I knew this would happen, I would have forced myself on her. I'm a professional at this, I've done it before. That's right. Pinliang said. How could I let that bastard Lin Yi beat me to it? But it's too late now, I regret it. Zhou Ruoming had been holding it in for a long time, but now that a young bully with a similar identity appeared, and the two of them were in the same boat having a common enemy, Lin Yi, it was only natural that Zhou Ruoming would complain to him. Ming bro, I don't agree with what you said. Pinliang suddenly changed the topic. As the saying goes, a good meal isn't too late. It's not too late for you to make your move now. No matter how fast Lin Yi is, he won't be able to take Tang Yun in 2.5 days. If you take her now, she'll be with you. Pinliang didn't have much education and he didn't know if he was using the right words. Fortunately, Zhou Ruoming was a fool. He didn't understand what a good meal isn't too late meant, but he felt that Pinliang's words made sense. Zhou Ruoming slapped his thigh and shouted in surprise. That's right, why didn't I think of that? It's not too late for me to make my move now. Tang Yun will be mine, and Lin Yi won't be able to play anymore. Liangzi, you've really woken me up. Ruoming matched Pinliang's when Zhou line with his own in order to show off his culture level. Man Ming bro, there's hope for your path of love, but I still need to work hard. Pin Liang was overjoyed when he saw that Zhou Ruoming had accepted his suggestion. Now that Tang Yun was fucked by Zhou Ruoming, Lin Yi would probably be very depressed, right? But on the surface, Pin Liang still acted sad and helpless. Liang Zi, I'll thank you heavily after this is done. Zhou Ruoming clenched his fist as if he had seen hope. But don't reject me when I ask you to give me some advice. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Pin Liang said happily. Why was she asking for his help? Alright, that was his strength. Pin Liang hummed a tune as he walked to the classroom. Zhou Ruoming was happy to play basketball with his lackeys now that he'd solved his problem. Pin Liang saw his lackey Zhang Naipeo running towards him like crazy before he reached the classroom door. It was as if he had seen his savior. Pao, what are you doing? You're running so fast, are you training for the sports day? Pin Liang was in a good mood today, so he joked with Naipeo. Liang bro. I'm begging you, save my dad, save my brother. Naipeo said as he knelt down in front of Pin Liang. Pin Liang froze at Naipeo's sudden action. Pao, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with your dad and brother? How can I save you? Can't you explain it more clearly? Pin Liang frowned. He didn't understand what Lin Yi was talking about. Chapter 184. Chapter 184, Zhang Naipeo's Pleek Pao, get up first. What's up with you kneeling on the ground? Pin Liang didn't look like he was joking, but this wasn't the right place to be kneeling on the ground. Liang bro, please promise me. I'll get up if you promise. Naipeo's only hope was Pin Liang right now. If Pin Liang was willing to help him, then his family would be safe. Alright, I promise you. Get up now. Pin Liang said as he pulled Naipeo up. Pao, if you have something to say, just say it. This is a school, what would people think of you kneeling on the ground? Liang bro. I'm sorry, I was too impulsive. Naipeo said, realizing that his actions weren't very appropriate. You can't do that even if you're impulsive. Pin Liang said. Alright, let's talk about it first. Liang bro, my dad's doing business and a competitor set him up. Naipeo explained. They're going to sue him for fraud and he's going to jail. Oh? Pin Liang frowned. He knew about Naipeo's family, it wasn't too bad. His father was doing business outside and his mother was a full-time housewife. How did this happen? But what does this have to do with your brother? Pin Liang asked. They're forcing my dad to pay back the money, so my brother has to sell his kidney. Naipeo said. Your brother has to sell his kidney? Pin Liang didn't understand. Why not you? I'd go if I could sell my kidneys, why would I ask my brother to do it? Naipeo said. I did some research and they said that I'm a yin blood or something. I don't know much about it, but it's just that kidneys for people with my blood type aren't easy to find, and there aren't many people who need it. I can't sell it anytime soon. I see. Pin Liang nodded. Then how do you want me to help you? Liang bro, can you lend my family some money to help us get through this? Naipeo said. Even if I have to work like a horse or cow, I'll repay your kindness for the rest of my life. How much? Pin Liang wasn't much of a person, but Naipeo had been with him for a long time, and he'd always been his follower and vanguard. Pin Liang couldn't just ignore him. 700,000. Naipeo said carefully. What? 700,000? So many? Pin Liang paused. If it was 100,000 or 80,000 he could just gather some of his New Year's money, but 700,000 was out of his reach. That's right, brother Liang. If it wasn't for the huge amount, I wouldn't have come to beg you. Naipeo said with a bitter face. Liang bro, please help me. If you need me, just say the word. If you need a cow, I'll be a cow. If you need a horse, I'll be a horse. Brother Liang, I won't even blink if you ask me to commit suicide. Hey Naipeo, don't worry. This is a serious matter and I don't have that much money. You know that. Pin Liang said. I can only give my dad a call. You go back to class first, I'll think about how I'm going to tell him. Liang bro, you have to help me. Naipeo thought that Pin Liang was just brushing him off, that he didn't want to help. Listen to me, Naipeo. You've been with me for 3 years, I'll do my best for you. Don't think too much, I'm just thinking about how I'm going to tell my dad. Pin Liang patted Naipeo's shoulder. Alright Liang bro, I'll go back first. You have to help me. Naipeo nodded. Pin Liang went back to class, thinking about Naipeo's situation. Logically speaking, 700,000 was a small amount for his family, but it was enough to buy a luxury car. Pinliang had to think about it carefully. Naipeo had been with him for 3 years, he'd been his follower for 3 years, he'd been at his beck and call every day and he'd never complained. This touched Pinliang a little. But being touched was one thing. What Pinliang cared more about was the benefits the 700,000 would bring him. With this 700,000, Pinliang believed that Naipeo would owe him a huge favor, a huge one at that. If he ever needed Naipeo's help in the future with his personality, there was no way he wouldn't push it away. But was 700,000 really worth it? Pinliang weighed the pros and cons in his mind. Judging from Naipeo's actions of sacrificing himself to save his brother, the kid had some sense of loyalty. But loyalty? Did he really need it from Naipeo? Pinliang decided that he'd call his father and ask for his opinion. With that in mind, Naipeo left the classroom and went to the washroom. Seeing that there was no one there, he took out his phone and called his father, Zhong Fabai. Pinliang? Fabai's heart sank when he got his son's call. It had been a very eventful time, he'd just taken care of Heibao's business, and he couldn't let anything go wrong. Under normal circumstances, Pinliang wouldn't call him on his own. If he did, then something big must have happened. Ling Yi quickly asked, "What happened?" "Dad, I have something to discuss with you," Pinliang said. "Oh, what is it?" Fabai let out a breath of relief when he heard that Pinliang was just looking for him. As long as it wasn't a big problem. "It's like this Zhang Naipeo from our class, you remember him, right?" Pinliang asked. "Zhang Naipeo? Oh, I know your follower. What happened to him?" Fabai knew of Naipeo, the kid often came to play with someone called Gao Xiaofu. "It's like this, Zhang Naipeo's family is in some trouble. His father got screwed over in a business deal and now he's in a huge debt. The other party wants him to pay up and if he doesn't they'll sue him." Pinliang kept the story short. "Zhang Naipeo's begging me now, he wants me to lend him some money." "Oh, that's what happened." Fabai got the gist of it. It was actually very simple, his son's classmate's family was in trouble, and he wanted to borrow money from his son. "Son, what do you think?" Chapter 185. Chapter 185. Buying people's hearts, 700,000. For an ordinary family, this is a huge sum of money. Fabai nodded, but it wasn't much to him. "Then what do you think?" "I'm thinking, is it worth it to give this money away?" Pinliang said. "Son, it's important to be loyal when you're in society," Fabai said with a smile. "Just like this Zhang Naipeo, he's your underling and you're his boss. You can't just leave him be if something happens to him. But the thing is, how's this underling's character? Would he go through fire and water for you? If you ever need his help in the future, would he step up?" "Dad, I can promise that. Zhang Naipeo may be a bit of an idiot, but he's definitely a loyal man. I'll help him out this time, and if I ever need his help in the future, I'll let him die for me," Pinliang said. "Ah, isn't that it?" Fabai smiled. "When I was young, I helped an underling as well. I didn't have much use for him back then. But many years later, when my shoddy construction got into trouble, this underling stood up and took the blame for me. So, Pinliang, you need to be accurate in your judgment of people. If this Zhang Naipeo is really useful, then I'll give him this money." Fabai smiled. "That's why, Pinliang, you need to be accurate in choosing people. If this Zhang Naipeo is really useful, then I'll give him this money. Dad, I'm not involved in any projects. I don't need someone to take the blame for me." Pinliang still didn't want to. It was 700,000. "Why don't you have it? I've taken care of Heibao for you, but if he bites you out, you'll be in jail too. With this Zhang Naipeo, you can just push the blame onto him, say that he's the mastermind, and that you were just tricked into participating. That'll be fine, right?" Fabai said. "Of course, taking the blame is just one fact. There are some dangerous things like killing someone, you can't do it yourself. So, if there's nothing wrong with this guy, 700,000 is worth it." "I understand, Dad. I'll talk to him later." Pinliang agreed with his father's words. If he were to get into trouble in the future, or if there was something he couldn't handle himself, he could always ask Naipeo to do it for him. It'd be like leaving something up his sleeve. "Go Pinliang, you've grown up. You need to train your own men in confidence," Zhong Fabai said. "This will be very useful for you when you enter society in the future." Pinliang, on the other hand, nodded repeatedly. After hanging up, Pin Liang dialed up Nai Peo's number. Nai Peo didn't dare answer the phone in the classroom, but seeing that it was Pin Liang, he quickly got up and ran out of the classroom. He looked around and saw Pin Liang waving at him from the bathroom door. He quickly ran over. Liang bro, you're looking for me. Pow, I've told my dad about you. Pin Liang paused to keep Lin Yi in suspense. Brother Liang, how is it? What did Uncle Zhong think? Chapter 186. The stand sold out, so are you eating at Tang Yin's house this weekend or at noon? One of the two? Lin Yi asked. Let's go this weekend then. Kong Xiaobo evidently didn't want to miss out on a good opportunity like this. There were exams almost every day in the 12th years. Half of the morning class was spent on exams. Lin Yi had been on a mission back then, but he'd completely assimilated into life now. He'd assimilated into this school, this class. Most importantly, his age. Lin Yi felt like he'd gotten a lot younger, and this time he was starting to see things from the perspective of a person his age should be. He'd started to like chatting with his new friends, joking around with pretty girls. He'd fallen in love with this school, this class. He'd fallen in love with Tang Yin, this arrogant yet cute girl. How long would this last? Perhaps a few days, perhaps a few months. He'd go back to his old life and all of this would no longer belong to him. He'd truly enjoyed the beauty of life, and Lin Yi was tired of his old life. There was no excitement to speak of other than the thrill of killing, and Lin Yi was numb to his enemies. It was time to talk to his old man. Perhaps this was the life he'd been looking forward to? Lin Yi and Kong Xiaobo left class at noon. There was a test in the last class, and the class ended a little later than the other classes. Most of the students had already left the school building. Meng Yao and Yushu went to the cafeteria as usual, eating at the small restaurant on the second floor. They didn't care how many people there were on the first floor. They didn't need to wait in line to order. Food Street was always bustling at noon. The 12th graders, on the other hand, didn't come here often due to their tight schedule. The first and second graders, however, had already crowded the place. The food here wasn't exactly clean, nor was it particularly delicious, but it was much better and cheaper than the food in the cafeteria. Mrs. Tang's barbecue stand was unusually popular today, and there were many students crowding around it. That was how news in school spread like wild, good or bad. For example, Lin Yi's love letter to Tang Yin had spread like wildfire in the 12th grade before class even started. Mrs. Tang's barbecue stall was the same as well. The enticing aroma, coupled with the endless praises from the students who tasted it, had the entire crowd surrounding the stall. That was how things were in a lot of situations. The more people there were, the more they wanted to join the crowd. Mrs. Tang was excited, but at the same time she was overwhelmed with work. It looked like the ingredients she had prepared today wouldn't even be enough for lunch. It looked like she had to make a trip home in the afternoon to prepare more. Still going? Lin Yi smiled bitterly as he looked at Xiaobo. There's a little too many people here, asking when he's going to her house this weekend in front of all these people. Isn't that just asking for trouble? Do you think Tang Yin can answer? Kong Xiaobo thought about it and agreed. Tang Yin was afraid of people saying that she had a relationship with Lin Yi. How could Tang Yin answer if he asked her when he was going to her Tang's Tang family dinner? Things got out of hand. The treat for the weekend might be cancelled. And should we wait? Kong Xiaobo asked hesitantly. Come with me to the bookstore and buy some stuff. Lin Yi nodded. We'll come back in a bit. Kong Xiaobo didn't know what Lin Yi wanted to buy, but he admired Lin Yi from the bottom of his heart. Whatever Lin Yi said, he agreed without hesitation. In the bookstore, Lin Yi bought a CD of Su Shirhan's concert. Kong Xiaobo was surprised. Boss, you like Su Shirhan too? Ha. Lin Yi didn't know how to answer the question. A little. Kong Xiaobo paused. A little. Why did he come all the way here to buy the original? I bought it for a friend. That was the only explanation he could come up with. Luckily, Kong Xiaobo didn't ask more and changed the topic to Su Shirhan. Boss, I like Su Shirhan too. I heard that she's a rare pure girl in the entertainment industry. Pure girl? Lin Yi curled his lips. How many pure girls were proven to be lustful? Superficial things like that couldn't be trusted. The two of them ate beef noodles downstairs in the bookstore before returning to school. When they arrived at the food street, they found out that Mrs. Tang's stall was gone. But the other stalls were still there. It didn't seem like the law enforcement came to chase them away. Plus, this food street was approved by the street administration. Under normal circumstances, no one would come and chase them away. Lin Yi was puzzled. Xiaobo, was it that place? Lin Yi pointed at the place where Mrs. Tang's stall was. Yeah, but where did it go? Boss, wait, I'll ask someone. Kong Xiaobo said and ran to a barbecue stall at the front of the food street. Uncle, can I ask, where did the Tang barbecue stall go? Wasn't it there just now? The owner of the barbecue stall had a look of hatred on his face. It sold out. I'm closing. You can buy it from me. Then forget it. Your place doesn't taste good. Kong Xiaobo said and left. Fuck. The barbecue stall owner cursed. He was about to explode in anger. Today almost all of the customers had been snatched away by Tang Ji Barbecue. His first barbecue stall on the food street had actually sold less than 2/3 of the usual. This made him very angry. He didn't care when Tang Barbecue wasn't that popular. But now he was jealous. He had been selling barbecue on the food street for years. He was one of the veterans here. Otherwise he wouldn't have been able to get the front seat. Yet he was beaten by a newcomer like Mrs. Tang. This made Zhang Biaoqiao furious. Seeing another student come to Tang Barbecue and say that his barbecue wasn't good, Zhang Biaoqiao's face darkened. It was only the first day. There were still many students who didn't know about it. How would he have any business in a few days? Zhang Biaoqiao felt that he had to do something. Before today their barbecue was still the best seller on this street. But today Mrs. Tang had gotten her hands on a new recipe that changed the situation in an instant. Chapter 187. Chapter 187, Tang Yun's best friend Lin Yi wasn't in a rush to give the concert disc to Meng Yao when he got back to the classroom. They couldn't watch it now anyway, so he decided to wait until he got home. Yu Shu, however, sent him a text asking if he bought the disc. Lin Yi replied that he did. Yu Shu turned around and winked at him. Tang Yun and Lu Xinwen accompanied Mrs. Tang as they moved the stall to a warehouse nearby. Most of the vendors on the street stored their stalls in this warehouse every day, paying 300 kuai a month for storage. Although it wasn't cheap, it was much less troublesome than pushing things around every day. Tang Yun was happy to see the excitement on her mother's face, but at the same time she couldn't help but worry. He didn't expect that just changing a formula would be so popular. Originally, the ingredients that he had prepared were not likely to be sold out even at night. But today before noon they were all sold out and there were still people coming to him. This was only the first day. This recipe wasn't much to Lin Yi, but her family still owed him a favor. Tang Yun couldn't deny that. Hey Yun, I didn't think that your Lin Yi would have some skills. This recipe is selling like hotcakes. Lu Xinwen said jokingly after sending Mrs. Tang off on the bus with Tang Yun. He wanted to test Tang Yun on purpose. She hadn't had the chance to ask Tang Yun about what she saw yesterday morning. She and Tang Yun were best friends, but it was normal for them to not see each other for a day. Mrs. Tang and Tang Yun were too busy today, so Tang Yun called Xinwen over to help. Tang Yun blushed at Xinwen's words. What do you mean, my Lin Yi? I have nothing to do with him. Wen, don't say things like that. Is that so? Lu Xinwen looked at Tang Yun meaningfully. Yun, are we best friends or not? Yeah. Wen, why are you asking this all of a sudden? Tang Yun's heart tightened subconsciously. Did Xinwen notice something? However, there shouldn't be anything between him and Lin Yi, right? Since we're best friends, why are you still hiding it from me? Xinwen poked Tang Yun's forehead. Yun, have you fallen? Will you tell me the truth? Wen, what do you mean? Tang Yun was getting more and more nervous. What are you talking about? Why don't I understand? Pretend? Keep pretending? Xinwen looked at Tang Yun disappointedly. Yun, I always thought that you and I could talk about anything. But I'm so disappointed. Wen, what are you talking about? I really don't know what's going on. Tang Yun was also anxious. If you have something to say, just say it. Yun, why did you come to school yesterday morning? Xinwen sighed as she stared into Tang Yun's eyes. Tang Yin lowered her head guiltily, not daring to look at Xinwen. Xinwen knew that she'd taken Lin Yi's car yesterday? But how did she know? She'd looked around when she got out of the car to make sure that there was no one around before running away. Yun, why aren't you talking? Xinwen asked aggressively. I took Lin Yi's car. Tang Yin said, but Wenwen, listen to me. It's not what you think. Oh? Then tell me what's going on. Xinwen let out a breath of relief when Tang Yun admitted it. Tang Yun didn't hide it from her after all. Yesterday, Li Erlin was bothering me at the bus stop. Lin Yi happened to pass by here, so he got out of his car and chased Li Erlin away. Then I took his car to school. Tang Yun explained carefully. When it's actually that simple. There's nothing going on between us. Xinwen also bumped into Li Erlin yesterday, so she started to believe Tang Yun's words. Then why did you take his car? I was panicking and didn't know what to do, so Lin Yi pushed me into his car. Tang Yin explained, feeling wronged. I only realized that it was too late when he started driving. Is that so? You really didn't fall for him? Xinwen let out a breath of relief. I didn't. Tang Yin shook her head after some hesitation. Why would she fall for Lin Yi? That was impossible. Good. Xinwen nodded. Right, I went to Xiaofen's house yesterday and her emotions weren't stable. Her mom said that she kept calling out that person's name these past 2 days, and that she was even hallucinating. Ah? Tang Yin sighed after hearing Xinwen's words. She had been helping her mom with the barbecue stall every day, so she didn't have time to visit Xiaofen at night. She could only ask Xinwen to go over, but it seemed like something serious had happened to Xiaofen. Tang Yin was worried, but there was nothing she could do. I'll go over tonight. I suggest that Aunt Cui take Xiaofen to the psychiatry department at the hospital, Kimwen said. But Aunt Cui's family situation is pretty much the same as ours, and she spent quite a lot of money on Xiaofen's medical bills. Where would she find the money to go to the psychiatry department? That person didn't come back to visit Xiaofen. Tang Yin was a little indignant. Xiaofen wouldn't have ended up like this if it wasn't for that person. Even if Xiaofen wasn't a virgin anymore with her looks, it wouldn't be hard for her to find a better boyfriend. No, hoping that bastard Kong Mingming would come back to visit Xiaofen? Unless the sun rises from the west. Lu Xinwen sneered. If it wasn't for Xiaofen stopping me, I would have castrated that bastard Kong Xiaoming. Tang Yin blushed. Her best friend's words were really powerful. She didn't know what to say. Tang Yin was too embarrassed to say something like that. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go back and study. Xinwen threw away the unhappiness in her mind and walked back to school with Tang Yin. He had to go with Kong Xiaobo to ask Tang Yin about going to her house during the weekend, so Lin Yi couldn't go back with Meng Yao and Yushu. He sent them a text to tell them that he had something to do with Kong Xiaobo after school. Meng Yao didn't mind and replied with a got it before leaving with Yushu. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was slowly packing his things. He only quickened his movements after Meng Yao and Yushu left. Chapter 188. Bullying people, that won't happen. Lin Yi wasn't in a rush. They were selling like hotcakes at noon, so they'd definitely prepare more for the night. How could they sell out so quickly? That's true. Kong Xiaobo calmed down after listening to Lin Yi's analysis. The main reason Lin Yi didn't want Meng Yao and Yushu to see him looking for Tang Yun. Otherwise, the miss of the Chu family might throw a tantrum again. Lin Yi's attitude was that it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble until the two of them left. Lin Yi glanced at the corner of the street not too far away after leaving the school gates. He only calmed down when he didn't see Faubert's Bentley, and walked towards the food street with Kong Xiaobo. Boss, it can't be that popular, right? Why are there so many people? Kong Xiaobo pointed at the food street, surprised. Even the people from the other stalls are buying Tangyin's barbecue? Lin Yi frowned. There were a lot of stalls surrounding Tangyin's barbecue stall. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't believe that they were buying Tangyin's barbecue. Tangyin might be in trouble, let's go check it out, Lin Yi said as he quickened his steps. As expected, a man's loud voice could be heard as they got closer. I say, boss lady, isn't that a little too much? We're all from the same street and you're stealing our business like that. The speaker was naturally Zhang Biaojian. He'd been pissed off that Tangyin's barbecue was more popular than his own, and he wasn't willing to lose his business just like that. He'd contacted a couple of other barbecue vendors, planning to give Mrs. Tang a hard time at night. As far as Zhang Biaojin, Mrs. Tang was no different from a widowed mother. A bedridden man was no different from a cripple. Her family was easy to bully. If he threatened her, she would definitely give in. Big bro, let's talk this out. It's not like we're trying to steal your business. Mrs. Tang was a little scared when she saw so many people helping Zhang Biaoqiao. None of the onlooking vendors said they were supporting Zhang Biaoqiao, but none of them spoke up for her either. You didn't steal my business? If you set up a stall here at noon, all the students will go to your stall to buy things. Who are we going to sell to? Another old woman from the barbecue stall spoke up. You call this not stealing business? Are you waiting for us to starve to death before you consider that you didn't steal our business? That's right. You sold more than all of us combined. Are you going to let us live? Another thin and tall man also began to speak. Mrs. Tang didn't expect that she would offend so many people while her business was doing well. She didn't know what to do. My mother is doing business properly. How is this stealing your business? Tang Yin was a little pissed off as she stood up for her mother. Our food tastes good and the customers are willing to buy from us. How is that our fault? If you want your business to be good, then you can improve the recipe. Well said, little girl. Zhang Biaoqiao laughed. We want to improve the recipe as well. Since you've said it, then I won't hold back. Hand over the recipe and we'll all learn from it. Then we'll call it even. The recipe belongs to us. Why should we give it to you? Tang Yin wasn't expecting Zhang Biaoqiao to be this unreasonable. What advantage would they have if they gave him the recipe? Why should we? Because you stole our business. We want the recipe and that's what the people want. Isn't that right, brothers and sisters? Zhang Biaoqiao said to the people beside him. Yeah. Why don't you give us the recipe? We can all earn money together. It's not good to keep everything to yourself. The old barbecue woman agreed. It's fine if you don't give us the recipe. You can change it back tomorrow and we'll be the same. The tall and skinny man said darkly. What if we don't give you the recipe and we don't change it? Tang Yin was on the verge of crying. What kind of bully was this? A bunch of people bullying her and her mother? Was there no law? Don't give it? You won't change it? Zhang Biaoqiao laughed coldly. That's not up to you. I don't think you can come to this food street tomorrow. Tang Yin's eyes were red. She was on the verge of tearing up. How could they bully her like that? Business was good so they couldn't come here? Mrs. Tang was afraid that Tang Yin would do something irrational. She hugged Tang Yin and pointed at Zhang Biaoqiao with a trembling finger. Are you bullying us because we don't have a man? What's so great about bullying us? They wouldn't be this arrogant if their lover wasn't bedridden, right? Don't say it like that. This is what the people want, Zhang Biaoqiao said. He was bullying Tang Yin because she didn't have a man in her family. He knew about Tang Yin's family a long time ago. Otherwise he wouldn't be so arrogant today. Mrs. Tang hugged Tang Yin, shaking with anger. Why was it so hard to do business? Bullying them because they saw that their family was making money? Wasn't this too much? Tang Yin was annoyed that she wasn't a boy. Even if she was, they wouldn't be so reckless, would they? Tang Yin looked at the crowd of people standing around, not bothering to meddle in their business. Tang Yin felt despair. Her family had just gotten better and they had new hope. Was it going back to how it used to be? Xiang my ass. Linny pushed through the crowd and rushed in. Wasn't this Zhang Biaoqiao a bit too much? Bullying Tang Yin and her mother? What was he thinking? Didn't he know that he was protecting the mother and daughter? The peddler that Lin Yi pushed away was about to yell at him, but quickly shut his mouth when he saw Lin Yi's face. This was the new young thug from First Middle. Even someone as powerful as Ruoming couldn't make a sound after getting slapped in the face by him. Who would want to mess with him? Lin Yi grabbed Zhang Biaoqiao by the collar and lifted him up. You're the leader, aren't you? Who the fuck? Zhang Biaoqiao wanted to yell at the person who grabbed his clothes, but shivered when he saw Lin Yi's face. He had quite an impression of Lin Yi. He'd slapped Zhou Ruoming until he didn't even dare let out a fart. Someone like that was truly ruthless. Zhang Biaoqiao used to sell seafood, but Zhou Ruoming got a stomach ache and came to smash his stall the next day, beating him up so badly that he couldn't get out of bed for a couple of days. He didn't dare sell seafood anymore after he recovered, switching to selling barbecue, but he was still very afraid of Zhou Ruoming. It wasn't a secret that Zhou Ruoming had a big brother who was the head of the gangsters in the north of the city. Zhang Biaoqiao didn't dare do anything after finding out. It was just a game for him to beat him up. Chapter 189. Smashing them, little brother. What's the matter? Zhang Biaoqiao stuttered. He was no longer as domineering as before and his expression was a little ugly. The barbecue woman and the tall skinny man obviously knew who Lin Yi was, the one who'd slapped Zhou Ruoming in the face last week at the food street. Who didn't know him? Who didn't know of such an all-powerful character? And that follower of his? Biaoqiao's eyes narrowed as he looked at Kong Xiaobo. Remembering the student he'd talked to at lunch, wasn't that Kong Xiaobo? He was Lin Yi's follower? Then they in Tang barbecue. Biaoqiao suddenly remembered a tragic reality. The reason why Lin Yi had slapped Zhou Ruoming last time was all because of Tang Yin. And who was Tang Yin? She was the daughter of the owner of Tang barbecue. Was Lin Yi here to stand up for them this time? Biaoqiao froze at the thought of that possibility, his face draining of blood. How could he have overlooked something so important? He'd thought that Tang barbecue didn't have a man anymore, and that he could bully them all he wanted, but the man from their house was a fierce one. You want the recipe, right? Lin Yi felt pity for these small merchants who worked so hard to earn money every day, but that wasn't a reason for them to bully people. Tang Yin's mother earned her money with her own hands, without stealing or robbing. These people, on the other hand, were making trouble for Mrs. Tang when they saw her making money, demanding the recipe from her. It was a behavior that infuriated Lin Yi. But I don't want it. I'm just joking. Biaoqiao didn't dare ask for it anymore. As far as he was concerned, rich young masters like these would be beating him up for nothing, let alone Zhou Ruoming, who had a gangster brother. How could he be more powerful than Zhou Ruoming? I gave you the recipe. If you want it, I can give you one. Lin Yi let go of Zhang Biaoqiao. Zhang Biaoqiao lost his balance and fell to the ground. No, I really don't want to. If Zhang Biaoqiao was still thinking about the formula, his brain would be punctured. Now what are you doing? Are you guys just watching the show? Lin Yi smiled coldly as he glanced at the vendors who had been watching the show. Towards these people, Lin Yi didn't have too much resentment. Zhang Biaoqiang was the old man here, and they couldn't possibly not support Zhang Biaoqiang and speak up for Tang Yun's family. So Lin Yi didn't think about looking for trouble with them, but today was enough to scare them. Otherwise, they would think that Tang Yun's family had no one and could bully them as they pleased. These peddlers were frightened by Lin Yi's gaze. They quickly dispersed and went about their own business. This was not a good show. If they didn't handle it well, they would invite trouble for themselves. You two don't leave. Lin Yi pointed at the old barbecue woman and the skinny man who were about to leave with the crowd. No. It's not our fault, it's Zhang Biaoqiao's idea. The old barbecue woman had already extinguished her anger. She was obviously someone who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Seeing that Lin Yi was ruthless, she immediately became careful. Yes, it's Zhang Biaoqiao's idea. We were just called here by him. The skinny man said. Do what he tells you to do. So you'll do whatever I tell you to do? Lin Yi asked back. The old barbecue woman didn't know what Lin Yi meant, but she still followed along. Bro, what do you want us to do? You two don't sell barbecue tomorrow. Change your job. No problem, right? Lin Yi rolled his eyes and changed their job. The old barbecue woman and the skinny man looked at each other. They wanted to object, but they didn't dare to. Who knew if Lin Yi would suddenly turn against them? Xiaobo? After Lin Yi said that, he ignored the two accomplices and called out to Kong Xiaobo. Boss, I'm here. You called me? Kong Xiaobo ran over excitedly. Awesome, it's really awesome. Although Kong Xiaobo was just a follower, he followed behind Lin Yi and watched the whole process. It made his blood boil. You go and smash his stall. Lin Yi pointed at Zhang Biaoqiao and said to Kong Xiaobo. Okay. Kong Xiaobo nodded and walked to Zhang Biaoqiao's stall. Under everyone's gaze, he kicked Zhang Biaoqiao's stall and flipped it over. Charcoal, skewers, money boxes and everything else were scattered all over the ground. Kong Xiaobo was still not satisfied. He stepped on the barbecue rack again and again until it was deformed. It was basically impossible to use it again. Zhang Biaoqiao's heart was bleeding, but he didn't dare to say no. Smashing a stall was fine, but he didn't want to smash himself again. Last time, Zhou Ruoming could beat him up so badly that he couldn't get out of bed for a few days. Zhang Biaoqiao broke into a cold sweat just thinking about it. All right. Lin Yi waved at Kong Xiaobo indicating that he could come back. Then Lin Yi turned to Zhang Biaoqiao and said, "This time it's smashing a stall, next time it'll be smashing people. This place of yours is pretty good. You don't mind if I give it to Tang Ji tomorrow, right?" I don't. Zhang Biaoqiao could only nod. What else could he say? The other party had already made it very clear that this time it was smashing a stall, next time it would be smashing people. If he said no, the other party would probably start smashing people until he agreed. "Since you're quite obedient, I'll give you the spot at Tangji. Sell something else tomorrow." Lin Yi changed Zhang Biaoqiao's line of work. "Is that okay with you?" I'll change. I'll definitely change." Zhang Biaoqiao nodded. The barbecue rack was smashed and he couldn't do it even if he wanted to. It wasn't a bad thing to change his line of work. Even if Lin Yi asked him to sell barbecue now, he wouldn't dare. What if he stole customers from Tangji and Lin Yi came back to smash his stall? Who could stand that? "Xiaobo, when you're free tomorrow, come and see if they've changed their line of work. If they haven't, just smash it," Lin Yi ordered Kong Xiaobo. "No problem, boss. Leave it to me. I'm good at this." Kong Xiaobo nodded and looked at the barbecue lady and the tall, thin man with a smile. The last bit of hope for these two had been shattered. If they didn't want to be smashed tomorrow, they'd better change their line of work. The two of them were a little regretful that they'd listened to Zhang Biaoqiao's lies, saying that they would split the recipe evenly among the three of them. Now that even their line of work had been changed, what was the point of having the recipe? Of course, Lin Yi wasn't really going to let Kong Xiaobo patrol. He was just trying to scare them. He didn't have that much time. Lin Yi didn't sympathize with Zhang Biaoqiao at all. He'd reaped what he sowed. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.